We start with the biggest story of the day. A 5-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court of India has delivered a key verdict on the constitutional validity of the practice of Triple Talaq. 3 out of 5 judges of the bench hearing the matter termed it as unconstitutional. A 5-judge constitutional bench was led by Chief Justice J.S. Kehar gave this split verdict as 3 judges termed Triple Talaq unconstitutional. 2 of them called it legal. The apex court put a 6-month stay on the practice of Triple Talaq, further directing Parliament to enact a law within that stipulated time. After reading separate judgments, the bench ruled in 3:2 majority, saying Triple Talaq was unconstitutional. It has now referred to the abolition of the practice in Islamic countries while delivering the verdict, and also asked as to why India cannot get rid of it. The Supreme Court verdict on instant Triple Talaq is being hailed as a big win for the rights of Muslim women in the country since the landmark Shah Bano judgment of 1985. All right, in fact, time for us to talk a bit more about this. Former Union Minister Margaret Alva is joining us live. So is WION's political editor Kartikeya Sharma. He joins us live from the newsroom. Thank you so much, Ms. Margaret Alva, for joining us. I want to start by asking you, yes, it's a historic verdict. Yes, this is a landmark judgment. Your initial reaction and the fact that it was a 3:2, a split verdict. How do you look at it?
Well, it is a majority verdict and I welcome it, but I really wish it was a unanimous verdict. It would have given the right signal from the judiciary. All the same, I'm glad that the battle has now been carried forward. Parliament is required to pass legislation within 6 months, and in the meantime, Triple Talaq is being held illegal. My only question is, what happens to those who violate this?
Right.
Who violates this norm and goes ahead with Triple Talaq? What is the punishment? Which is the authority which can intervene?
Right. I think as the law develops, we'll know, because implementation is also going to be a big challenge. Kartikeya, we have 6 months' time to come out with a new law. This is a split verdict, but it's great to see that, you know, we've risen above all the politicking in the case of Triple Talaq and finally come out and supported gender equality. We're talking about gender justice in the country. It's come in late, but nevertheless, it's a big step.
Yes, Sana, but before I get into that, I have a question for former Union Minister Margaret Alva. Madam, thanks for joining WION. You know, when I read your autobiography, there was a chapter you had dedicated that you had an encounter. You know, you went to Rajiv Gandhi, former Prime Minister's office, and you told Rajiv Gandhi, and you mentioned in your autobiography that for this issue should be seen from women's perspective. And there was a heated discussion, madam, and Rajiv Gandhi told you that if you can get so many thousands of people from minority community, then he would be probably more open to the idea of going along with the Shah Bano verdict. So has the wrong of Shah Bano verdict being corrected by the court in 30 years? Because you were probably the only one who protested in 1980s.
No, there were others who protested also. A minister resigned and, Muslim minister resigned and things happened. But the question is, I believed that we erred at that time in interfering with the verdict of the court. We should have stood by it, and it would have done great justice to Muslim women.
Madam, very few ministers would show courage to actually walk into the Prime Minister's room and say what they feel like. Can you, for the benefit of the young viewers, describe your meeting with Rajiv Gandhi, which took place 30 years back, when you actually spoke that the Congress government should support the verdict on Shah Bano?
Well, it's long ago. I was Minister for Women and Child Development, and so I was a little vocal in speaking up. But then, ultimately, the cabinet and the government's decision had to be accepted. I told him that it would not be in the interests of the government, the party, all the women of the country, not only the Muslim women, but all women, because we looked up to Rajiv ji as the champion and protector of women's rights.
Madam, do you feel little sad a credit which could have gone to the Congress party in 1980s? Now BJP walks away with it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually made a mention of it from Red Fort, and court in a split verdict has given the judgment. Do you feel that way, that perhaps Congress could have done better or taken the credit?
When? Now?
In 1987, when Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister.
That's right. I agree with you. I mean, many of us felt that we should not have brought that change, but there was tremendous pressure from the minority leaders within the party. And so ultimately the government succumbed to it. I do feel that it was not the right step that we took at that time. But today, as far as the present legislation, present judgment is concerned, I'm glad it has come, and I'm sure the Congress party will support the legislation when it comes to Parliament.
But isn't it a lesson, ma'am, before Sana asks you another question, isn't it a matter of regret that in names of minorities, whether it is Muslims or Christians, the reform stalled, and instead of addressing the problem from gender justice, it became a problem of majority versus minority?
Well, this always happens, when important issues come up. There are opinions which are not unanimous. But in this case, the Triple Talaq issue before the Supreme Court, we had hoped and we had expected that it would be a unanimous, strong verdict in favor of Muslim women. I am a bit disappointed that two judges thought differently and expressed different opinions.
So your advice to the Congress is that they should support the legislation. That's what you are saying, madam? When it comes to Rajya Sabha?
I think the Congress will support it. This is my feeling.
Despite Kapil Sibal and Salman Khurshid representing All India Muslim Personnel Law Board?
Well, I am not responsible for their views or actions. I can only talk as a Congresswoman. I believe that the Congress party will stand by the Muslim women.
Sana, to you.
All right. Mrs. Margaret Alva, it's important to look at what you were talking about earlier. What will be the law? How will that be implemented? How stringent will be the punishment? Do you think that this matter will see through all to the very end? Or, again, it'll get stuck in the parliament over differences, over politics? Or do you think this debate, a religious right versus unconstitutionality of it is settled once and for all, and everything, God willing, will fall into place?
Well, the important question now is the interim 6-month period, during which Triple Talaq will be illegal. But for those who violate that norm and go ahead, what happens? Who takes action? Who protects the divorced woman? What is it that the Supreme Court has provided
in its order? I think if I understand the order correctly, it will be invalid. If Triple Talaq does take place, it will be invalid for a time period of 6 months. But of course, we need more clarity on that. Also, give us a sense, why do you think, and we've been talking about this, why do you think India has taken so long in implementing this in terms of banning the practice of Triple Talaq? Other countries, Muslim majority countries, they've done away with it. Even countries like Turkey, a secular country, they've done away with it. Where do you think India was lacking? Has it always been about politics, or has it been more difficult to separate gender justice vis-a-vis the religion?
No. You have You have to look at it in historic perspective. Immediately after freedom came partition, and there were very deep wounds in the religious minority. I mean, among the Muslims, there was a sense of insecurity, there was a sense of belonging or not belonging because they had been moved from one part of the country to another. Keeping all this in view, it was but necessary, absolutely necessary, to give them security and not add to their problems and their concerns. That is why I believe the government went slow. The Congress party was very, very conscious of the sensitivity of the issue and didn't want to create problems. So also, for instance, with tribal custom and tribal traditions, in the Constitution we have said they will be protected. And the religion and the practices of the minorities have been guaranteed in the Constitution by the lawmakers themselves. And therefore, one must understand the perspective in which this issue didn't get really resolved.
Right. Also, ma'am, do you think this opens up a larger debate on the Uniform Civil Code, or perhaps when others talk about it, it's a bit too soon to bring that into the picture just yet?
I think so. I mean, I've always supported a common civil code, though I'm a minority myself. But I do believe that this issue needs to be sorted out, legislation brought. It could be the first step in the right direction, and a lot of other issues are tied up with the common civil code. It's not just the minority issue. It's a lot of the legislation would have to come to undo many practices among the Hindus themselves, the majority.
Right.
And therefore, minorities opposing it is not the question.
Right. And my last question to you before I let you go, Mrs. Margaret Alva. Does this open up a Pandora's box in terms of the jurisdiction or the extent to which the Supreme Court can bring about a change in personal laws of different religions in the country? Do you think it opens up, a Pandora's box, and now more and more changes one can expect in personal laws? And how do you see that happening?
Well, the Supreme Court has always been considered the final authority in the interpretation of the law, in the interpretation even of laws which affect different groups. And I don't think anybody can object to it. Opening a Pandora's box, any judgment can open it.
Okay.
But I believe that this judgment will go a long way in settling one issue, that individual rights, the rights of groups have to be protected irrespective
they are
of
above.
what those
I think the message is clear.
Or may not.
The message is clear that an individual's rights is their fundamental right, and it's it's way above a person's religion. An Indian citizens' rights first, and then comes the religion.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
Mrs. Margaret Alva, thanks so much. Appreciate you joining
That's
us
right.
here on WION and sharing your thoughts.
Equality. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please complete. Please complete. Now we won't let you go before you complete your point.
No, I was just saying that equality is guaranteed by the Constitution. And I think women have been the greatest, if I may say so, sufferers as far as personal laws and legislations are concerned. And therefore, it's time that the basic issue of equality of Indian citizens is brought into focus. And this judgment certainly places Muslim women at par with others as far as divorce and marriage laws are concerned.
Absolutely.
And I welcome.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Margaret Alva, for joining us here on WION.